we're going to talk all about short-term rentals, house hacking, and the different things that you need to know if this is a strategy that you want to implement for your clients. $291,000. Over $250,000. That is life-changing for so many people. And us as industry professionals have the ability to change those lives. This is the amount of money that I have made off of my primary residence in West Wash Park, Denver since 2017. That money was also a down payment for another short-term rental, a townhouse in Frisco, Colorado, that I continue to make money off of and build that equity and wealth. I think that is why this, our professions are so exciting, because we have the ability to help get people into homes, and utilizing house hacking and short-term rentals is a way that we can help bridge that gap between renting being cheaper than buying, and how can we show them that renting can actually be more expensive in the long run, or how home buying, their monthly payment living upstairs and having rental income in the basement can actually be less expensive than what they're currently paying in rent. So today's objectives are the importance of house hacking and short-term rentals, understanding short-term rental regulations in and around the city of Denver, types of house hacking, and then why it's different versus investor clients. So a little bit about me. 5 years ago, I was across I-25 at a corporation called Hormel Foods, worked there for 9 years, and really hated my job. After 9 years, I was like, I could not continue working in corporate America. So short-term rentals is really something that changed my life, because as you know, in the real estate industry, you go from high-level corporate to $0 potential. So I lived in the basement of my sister's house in Durango, Colorado, while I learned the ropes and rented out my house in Denver to be able to make that change. So just one example of the power that this provides clients, it was that safety net of, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Quitting my job, making $0 to know I can most likely pay my mortgage at least. So question for you guys. What percentage of your homeowners or buyers do you think would actually rent out a room in their house?
Maybe 10 to 20.
10 to 20%?
I think higher.
Higher? Like 30, 50, 70?
40.
40? Okay. Any other guesses? All right. Trick question, because polls are hard. I have 3 different answers for you. About half, 54% of those who own their home say that they'd consider renting it out through a service like Airbnb. On a Zillow survey, more than half of millennial, 55%, and Gen Z home buyers, 51%, expressed positive views on house hacking. Among surveyed homeowners, 39% have or would consider renting out part of their primary home. The younger generations have the most experience and interest in this realm, with 74% of Gen Z and 66% of millennials. Those are your first-time home buyers, and those are willing to do what I'm doing. And if we show them how, we help get more people into homes. So house hacking is not just for Gen Z and millennials. It's also for your retirees, right? My parents are both retired on a limited income, but they want to go to Europe for the month of July. Guess what? Their rental pays for their trip to Europe. It allows them to live a life that they don't even think that they could imagine. And what that means for you is even your current database of clients that you may have closed 3, 5, 10 years ago, it might be worth just, hey, I went to a presentation, I learned about house hacking and short-term rentals and the rules and regulations here, and it's a way to have that continue to reach out. Now, they might not be buying because they probably have a 3% interest rate and they want to stay in their home, but maybe they have a kid, so it opens that door to conversations, which in this industry, we're all about having the most conversations. You're gonna have the most income. So just an example. Or they might be downsizing into an area where they used to have a 5-bed, 4-bath house. Now it's just the two of them, their kids have left, but they want to be in an area where they can short-term rent their home when they're gone, or maybe they're gonna be gone for travel the whole year, and maybe Denver's not a great area for them because you have to live, they're a little bit more stickler than places like Arvada or Wheat Ridge, et cetera. we'll get into that. So housing affordability as really in the last 23 years is at an all-time high. This is national data, but 27% of a housing payment, or 27% of their income is now a housing payment, which is up where in 2021, it was only 13%, which is, we're feeling it, right? Like, you guys have clients, they send it to me as a mortgage lender. I say, oh, your monthly payment's $4,500. They're like, oh, I thought I wanted to buy. Then we have to break it down for them on how it's possible to bridge that gap in that monthly payment. So if we're utilizing this and if we're talking to clients about it, what do you think the most important thing to know about short-term rental and house hacking is important? To like, yep, exactly. Number one concern, can I do it? I want to do it, but can I? So understanding county regulations, city regulations, and HOA regulations. That's like your first step before you even go show the property. A phone call to a listing agent, getting those HOA docs. 90% of HOAs in Denver do not allow them. Places like the Glass House, there's like a handful of condo associations do, but very, very hard to find in an HOA situation. And then this is not to mention, as an agent, one, there's two reasons that we like to increase purchase price. One, which is very selfish reason, you get paid on commission, right? Like if you're at a $200,000 purchase range versus a $500,000 purchase range, you're making less. Now, most agents, I hope, are out for what's best for their client, right? Well, sometimes a bigger house is what's best for the client, even though that monthly payment is more. Because if I'm in a 1-bedroom, 1-bath condo at $200,000, I lose my job. I still have to live there. If I'm in a 2-bed, 2-bath, single-family house, I now can like open up a bedroom and make money off of it. And then two, on the flip side of that too, on an advantage to a client, is a lot of people grow into the house, right? Then they get married and they do need 2 bedrooms, or they start working from home and they're making more. So then they don't have to sell that first house, buy a new house, which is thousands of dollars in cost to go from a $200,000 condo to a $400,000 house when they could just do it and live there for 5 years instead of 2. So let's chat a little bit about Denver short-term rental regulation. What is considered a short-term rental? 30 days or less. The actual definition is period of 1 to 29 days. But yes, that is a short-term rental. And then can anyone short-term rent in Denver? Both tenants and homeowners? I'm getting some shakes no. Oh, I'm sorry. This is different. Anyone technically can, as long as it fits those HOA rules in Denver, but it has to be their primary residence. You cannot be an investor in Denver and short-term rent your place. And then, this is the question I just asked. You can, in the city of Denver, a tenant can short-term rent a house with landlord permission. So the owner of the home must give permission to the tenant, and then they can short-term rent. There's a website called Let You Let, which allows that it takes the tenant, it's like a contract, a rental contract, and you can like divide out the percentage of ownership. Percentage of rental income, not ownership. So, for example, it gives the landlord access to view like the Airbnb and who's coming and going in their house and how much they're paying. And then the landlord could specify the specific amount of extra income that they want. Like maybe they want 20% cut of that short-term rental income for allowing short-term renters in their house. So it's a way for landlords to legally short-term rent their property with the tenant, and possibly like say market rate is $2,500 for that particular house. They're making $2,000 a month. They could potentially make an extra $400 at 20% on their current listing just by allowing the tenant to offset. This is also a great thing for if somebody's trying to save for a down payment, right? If they're currently renting with a landlord, maybe they bring it up to the landlord and are like, hey, I'm going to Telluride this weekend. I'd love to rent out my house from Thursday to Monday. Can we sign some sort of agreement, get the light, all those things. So it doesn't have to be all the time. So it'd be a great way to help your clients save for a down payment if they're currently renters. So what's required to obtain a short-term rental license? This is what I was talking about. The landlord has to give permission, a driver's license, and then proof of the two of the following: utility bill, tax return, car registration, or voter registration. And that's proving occupancy, that it is their primary residence. Now, if you live in one side of a duplex, can you short-term rent the other side of the duplex if the first side is your primary residence?
Yeah.
No, sure can't.
Because you don't live in that.
Because you don't live in that side. If you had a tenant, they could. But yeah, that city, and this is all city of Denver. Remember, each municipality is different, and we're going to go into some other municipalities, but this is city of Denver. Can you short-term rent an ADU and live in the big house? Yes. And the ADU does not have to be a detached ADU. It could be a ADU in your basement. So Denver is primary residence. If you're working with investors, then Adams County, Westminster, Wheat Ridge, and Arvada are more investor friendly. Arvada has a regulation of they can only short-term rent for 240 days. What do you think you need to do for the other remaining days?
Live in it.
You don't have to live in it in Arvada, but good guess. So I advise clients to do a midterm rental. Put it on like Furnish Finder or Craigslist, or there's a lot of Facebook groups that you can have 30-day rentals. The peak season in Denver is from March and through September. So October through April is when I would suggest that they do 30-day plus rentals in Arvada.
Question about the 230 days. Is that anywhere from 1 up to 200?
Yep, exactly. Yep. And then Wheat Ridge says, yeah, we're good with investors, but we don't want investors on every block taking up our housing stock. So we're going to limit it to 2% of the housing stock on who we're going to get licensing to. This is where you would check the city website. This is, I pulled this on Friday, and the most updated was as of November 2023, where District 1, no remaining licenses, 56 people on the wait list. District 2, 0 remaining license, 23 people on the wait list. District 3, 14 remaining licenses. And then District 4, 16 on the wait list. So same thing, clients, like I'm going to go back to my retired couple that are like, oh, like we are downsizing. We'd love a place that we can short-term rent. Maybe we're going to go for a year, 2 years. My daughter lives in Australia. Like, well, they might want to buy in Denver, but maybe Wheat Ridge makes more sense. They can't, if we're in one of these 3 districts, they can't get their short-term rental license the minute that they close, but they can get on that wait list. That wait list licenses do not transfer with property sale. So as that attrition happens, then they're moved up on the list. In the meantime, they're, 1, either living there, or 2, they're midterm renting it during the process of getting on, like, from that wait list. Make sense?
You got this printed out, or can you email it to us?
Yes, I can. Yep. And then Denver, Adams County, there's no current regulations in place. I never tell a client to buy in a place that no regulations are. Why? Because that goalpost keeps moving, right? They buy a $500,000 house. They can rent it at the time of close. What happens 3 months later when every municipality is talking about short-term rental regulations and it's coming? So I wouldn't buy in some place that's not clearly defined on what the regulations is. Or just know that that's a risk, right? That you need to you might have to flip it to a long-term or midterm rental. Then we've got this coming up. Has anybody been, and I don't remember the name of the bill, SB 33, anybody up to date with SB 33? Yeah. So this is a regulation that already passed committee. I'm learning a lot about our judicial process that I probably should have learned in high school, that now, because it affects me, I'm like gung-ho on this. So our property taxes are just over 6% for a primary residence tax rate in Colorado. This bill is taking any rental that is not a primary residence, so think second homes and investment properties, from a primary residence tax to a commercial tax of almost 30%. On average, the second home owners that own a house, that will increase their mortgage or their bill, their tax bill, by $1,500 monthly. So if this passes, if I'm a listing agent, I'm calling everybody on an Airbnb list because their profit margin just went down, right? That could be the difference between paying their mortgage with their profitable rental and not. So stay attuned to that.
When are we looking at a vote?
So we have a day at the Capitol on February 6th where I'm a part of a board called Mile High Hosts for Community Advocacy, as well as CLARA, which is like the Colorado board for short-term rentals, and Summit County. And we're like merging all of our organizations to go speak with them. It's in this legislative session. I don't know when they vote on it. Like, so it's going to be after February 6th because our lobbyists with like VRBO and that's when there's like, we're kind of like corralling the troops. And I can send that in my follow-up email, a link if you guys like want to go with us to help this not happen.
So as an agent, am I praying this doesn't happen so that we can do more short terms, or that it does happen so we get more inventory?
So it's only investors and second homeowners.
Okay.
I would say as an agent, you do not want this to happen.
Okay.
Because you're going to have less people like, inventory, one, a lot of people with houses, 70% of people have a mortgage rate of under 4%. 70% of people have a mortgage rate of under 4%. So most likely they're going to be able to cash flow, but maybe not do short. So it's only 89 days. So what they would do is they'd rent out their house, like I would with my house in Summit County. I'd rent it out for that 89-day period. That remaining period, I'm going to do 30-day midterm rentals to offset. So it might not help inventory situation, right? Two, it takes a lot of money out of our, like think about the economy as a whole. Short-term rental guests spend $200 per person per day when they travel to Colorado. So we will know, like, I don't know all the talking points. I'm just like, holy crap, this is crazy. I think from a real estate agent standpoint, your inventory opening up is probably not significant enough to matter. And I think that the legislators think that it is, but what they're missing is that we are not in a housing shortage because of short-term rentals. We are in a housing shortage because 14 years we have underbuilt inventory. We have red tape for new permits to get built. We have rate lock where our government artificially deflated interest rates for 3 years. And now we are in the repercussions of all of those things happening right now. So we have very tight inventory, people not selling. I don't think that this is going to be a big mover of inventory.
And what's the appetite for 30-day rentals? Obviously, Summit County probably better, but Denver?
No, I would say Denver's better than Summit County.
Better, okay.
Yeah, and the reason being is that we've got more industry here. So Summit County is more of a tourist town. Here, 30-day rentals are higher because you've got traveling nurses that use 30-day midterm rentals. You have corporations and corporate housing and relocations utilizing 30-day. Like, so somebody, like I worked at Hormel. Somebody gets relocated to Hormel. They can't buy a house right away because they need to like understand the area. They're probably going to go into a fully furnished home for 3 to 6 months. Then you've got insurance claims. Those are a great way to find 30-day plus rentals. So of the Airbnb market, 20% of all Airbnb stays are 30-day plus.
Okay.
So if this passes, this is applicable only to STRs or to any type of rental?
Only to short-term rentals. Essentially, they want to short-term rent. They think that short-term rentals should be taxed like hotels. And we're trying to argue like, we're not a hotel. Like my 3-bed, 3-bath in Frisco, Colorado, that's about $900,000. I don't have 15 rooms in there at the same price as a hotel at like $1 million, right? Like why is and it's taxed on property value, which I think is really interesting because we know that property values are only assessed every 2 years. So what happens when that use changes and I move up there as my primary or I sell it and that's a primary? Then like I think there's a lot of unanswered questions that need to be addressed in this current proposal of legislation that just does not make sense. And we're tax logic. Like I think the misconception is that we're not taxed. Like if we're talking investment in second homes, like we still have occupancy tax. We still have tax per stay, which I think is a more relevant way to tax. If that place sits open for 8 months and has 90 rentals, then that doesn't change your tax bill. Like, that's crazy. So that more than I was planning to say on this, but just know it's coming. So the reason that it's relevant to you as realtors, if you have investor clients or second home owner clients, you need to let them know this, right? If they close in February and it passes February 28th, I was going to say 29th, but I don't think this year's a leap year, 28th, like, they're going to be pissed, right? That their monthly payment next year is $1,500 more expensive than they thought it was going to be, and that investment no longer makes sense.
So if this fails, are they going to counter right back with like 20%? And then we're going to have to argue that. And then they're going to do 15%. And we're going to argue that.
Jake, I would love to have more.
Sorry.
I don't work in the, I'm doing my, like, as my, like, I'm learning this legislative process as I go. And what I'm learning is, like, holy crap, people that don't know anything are making decisions about things that they shouldn't be making decisions about, is what I'm thinking. That was probably too blunt, but. So what types of house hacking and short-term rentals? So you've got a shared space rental. So that would mean, that would mean something like this. So this is my actual house. This does not have a door. This is the door to go in down to the basement. And I would rent my home even though they know I live upstairs and they just have a bedroom. That would be shared space. That is the difference in a listing point on Airbnb. So you make less money on a shared space rental because technically there's nothing separating the owner from, or the host from the guest. Then you have a whole house rental. So same house. I have them go, so I do two, I'm a hybrid host where I rent out my entire home when I travel. So 3-bed, 2-bath when I travel. And then I rent out just the basement when I'm home. So legally you can have 2 listings. You just can't have 2 different parties staying at the same time. So you couldn't have a listing for upstairs with guests and a listing for downstairs with the guests, but you could do a whole house listing with my calendars tied. If somebody books my whole house, the basement can't get booked because the whole house, they would have access to the basement. Or you can also have a whole house listing like I did. It took me years because I couldn't figure out how to put a door in my house. But finally, I have a barn door that locks, that separates this upstairs. So this upstairs used to be open. Now there's a door that closes. Now it's still a whole house listing, and I list it as a private basement suite. So they can't get to me, I can't get to them. Same house. Now it's a whole house listing. Now instead of $50 a night, it's like $85 to $90. That door cost me $1,500. One of the biggest mistakes is I did not put it in there 4 years ago. Whoops. Then I kind of chat about that. You can have listings for both. So for example, in 2021, I spent 6 months in South America. During that 6-month time period, full range, whole house. Actually, my office that is currently there, I spent $300, put a bed in there because a 3-bed, 2-bath makes a lot more than a 2-bed, 2-bath with an office. So I just moved my office to my garage since I knew I was going to be gone for a while, and put that in there. And then the other type that I'm not really focusing on, but just good to know about, is some people don't want strangers in their home, right? Some people are 25, living with 2 roommates right now anyway. Well, those 2 roommates could move into their new house. Then their roommates are paying them $2,000 a month. Their mortgage is $4,000 a month. $600 of that is going to their principal anyway. Probably not. It's probably like more like $300. Going to their principal anyway. Then, they're living, for more than what they're probably sharing it with their roommates right now. But they're building equity into their home as they're living with roommates. The other thing that I haven't chatted about is what I love about short-term rentals is the flexibility, right? One, I have a friend staying with me for 2 weeks, not renting out my basement. My mom was just here this weekend. Love that she can stay with me. The other thing is, is that you don't have to have it all the time. If people don't want people in their basement, but they travel a lot, maybe they lock and they don't want people sleeping in their bed. Maybe they lock their bedroom, lock their bathroom. There's a guest bedroom. They can use the kitchen in other spaces, but it's not a one size fits all model. There's multiple ways that they can go about this in a different direction. Maybe they I'll use that Telluride ski trip of oh, I just want to go to Telluride for a week or Europe for a week and rent out my house just during that period, where in the summertime, that week could be $4,000 just by renting out their house 1 week while they're going to be gone anyway, and it pays for their vacation. And then we kind of talked about this. Midterm rentals is the 30-day plus strategy. Furnish Finder, Airbnb, Craigslist, Zillow Rentals, Facebook groups, that's where I list my midterm rentals. So I actually do a midterm rental during the off season in Summit County. So I do it during May through November. I have a tenant there. And then December through April, I rent it out at a higher rate on short-term rentals for ski season. So when you're shopping for a house hacker, things to look for, is there a way to make it a separate entrance? Maybe there's not a separate entrance now, but could we put a door in where this window is? Could we block off this wall? Could we put a barn door right here? The stairs already go down to the basement. Are there already 2 units? Is there an ADU? Are the basement ceilings tall enough to be able to want to stay down there for 2 days or more? And then is there a possible additional bedroom that could be added with a wall? Maybe that would be great. And then the biggest thing to avoid is HOAs. So I can try to talk about my house as much as possible to give you the visual, but every other, so I do one of these classes, then I do a house hacker open house. I ended up doing one on the tube today because you were talking about your 2024. I'm hitting it hard, super ambitious, and going today, what the hell did I do myself? But today and then again on Wednesday, February 21st, I have a house hacker open house. So essentially it's like an open house that you'd have for a house that you're selling, but it's where you and your clients can walk through an actual active house hack where you can get tips and tricks oh, I use fake plants even in the planters outside because nobody's there actually watering my plants. Or I have baskets where I, take my bathroom stuff, and all my bathroom stuff is usually in the basket. I just take those baskets into the owner closet. I have an owner's closet where my closet is, where literally I'm oh, I'm going to go to Houston and visit my sister for a year. Or not a year. That would be a long time. For a week. I'm just going to shut this door, hire the cleaners to come in. They come in. It makes it rental ready. I come back a week later. My house is cleaner than when I left it because the cleaners came in after the guests had already left. So these events are for you to see what it can do. And I talk about how my house was before I changed things. So that way you can kind of see a visual of that. And then I do this too for agents where if you wanted to send out an email blast or text blast, I have templates for you to just plug and play of just hey, a lender I know is a house hacker. I thought this event would be great for you. So that way you have an outreach to your clients without actually having to plan or host an event. You could just show up and meet your clients there and walk them through the house with them for kind of a marketing thing that you guys don't actually have to do any work for. So let's chat about why a primary versus an investment property from a financing standpoint. What is the minimum down for an investment property? 25? 20? Okay, you guys are kind of all right. Here's the thing. Technically, conventional loans, in the guidelines, it states 15%. You can't actually get a property for 15% now. You could 2 years ago. Anybody know what changed? Because the guidelines still say that 15% for Fannie and Freddie, conventional loans.
Self-sustainability test? That's FHA.
That's FHA. It's something called loan level price adjustments. So Fannie and Freddie are still something called government-sponsored entities. after the 2000, they used to be private companies. They still kind of are, but they're now sponsored by our government. And our government says, we'll let you play, but we want to write the rules. So in March of 2022, they came out with new loan level prices. These price adjustments essentially say at 15% down, you can do it, but I'm going to charge you 4.125% in points for the same exact rate that you would get as a primary residence. In addition to that, even if you have excellent credit, I'm going to charge you 0.375% in points. So on a cost of a $400,000 loan, the same rate as of Friday for a primary residence as an investment property would be 4.5% in points. So $18,000 in upfront interest just for putting 15% down. In addition to that, there's something called compliance regulation. Compliance states, still government regulations, states I, as a lender, cannot charge more than 5% in total fees to originate a loan. If my rate costs 4.5% already, we're over compliance. And nobody wants to spend $18,000 to then refinance 9 months later and they lose all that money. So, well, yes, technically you could get a home for 15% down. I would not recommend it. And 25% down, if you look at this, 25% down on an investment property is 2.125% in points. So you save 2% in closing costs just by putting an additional percentage down. Same thing at 20%, you're saving a little bit more, still very expensive. Now, they don't have to opt for the 6.625 rate, right? I'm just trying to compare apples to apples. Now, the problem is with investments in today's market, there are very little, depending on how much you put down. If you're putting 15% down, there are no rates without points for investment properties at 15% down. So for primary residence, the minimum down on a primary residence is 3% down. If you're a repeat buyer and it's your primary residence, what's the minimum down? 5%. You are very accurate for 99% of deals. No, not even 99, probably like 90%. There is a program that allows repeat buyers, income-based, if they make under, in the Denver market, 80% AMI, which is average median income, they, as a repeat buyer, can put 3% down.
If they make 80%.
100,000. 100,500 in Denver market. So that would be.
It's like nobody. You can't afford a house.
You can.
Yeah,
I mean, I've done this probably 4 times this past year. Okay. In the houses, they're in like 300, like they're outside of Denver or a condo. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it's still like mind blowing. Like one person that is closing at the end of the month, he is a repeat buyer. He owns a condo now. He's turning that condo into an investment. He's moving into a new condo. He's utilizing CHFA because CHFA is not a first-time home buyer program. It is a repeat buyer program too, as long as they hit the income limits. So he's using 4% with CHFA. He has 3%, and then we have seller concessions. He's literally walking to the closing table on a repeat buyer for $1,000. So, if you're willing to move, it's a great investment strategy. And I'm going to go back to these because I want to go to this. So this is the difference. It is way easier to save up $27,000 or $9,000 than it is $167,000. So that is the difference between moving and buying. So this is a repeat buyer putting 5% down. This would be a first-time home buyer or a repeat buyer that is makes under that $100,000. CHFA is $166,000 to use the 4%. So you don't have to stick under the $100,500 to utilize CHFA. But if you're a repeat buyer, you have to be under that $100,000 for $100,500 to utilize the 3% down as a second repeat buyer. that make sense?
What about like combining incomes? So like
makes too much money.
Yeah, like what's the maximum income for like if you're married, you know, 2 incomes in the household?
It's the same no matter what. Mm-hmm. Yep. But it's qualifying income. So one strategy that I always implement is, let's not put the wife on the loan. Let's just put Jake on the loan. You know, like, so it is qualifying income. If I have not verified wife's income, I do not have to add it. Other strategy is, you make $20,000 in bonus income? I can't get proof of that continuance for the next 3 years, or I don't have proof of the last 2 years. So I don't technically have to put that on there. So that is like, so on debt to income ratio, we're looking at 50% debt to income ratio. So sometimes people can qualify, they just don't want that monthly payment. But if they do have like a spouse or, somebody living with them that's not on the loan. Now, all programs are different. There are some CHAFA loans that is qualifying income of a household income versus just the loan income. So we have to be careful about that, but that's my job to worry about. And then I'm going to go back to, so primary residents can use DPA. They can also use programs called Home Ready and Home Possible. They're also, I didn't put this on there, but there's also geographic reductions in interest rates based on the loan, but it has to be a primary residence, which is this program. So this is a map of all the different areas. So like, and if you have a listing, if I'm not your lender, you should be reaching out to your lender and be like, hey, do you have a program that in these particular areas? Because these are 100 bips under normal pricing. What does that mean? For the same rate, it's like on a $600,000 loan, that's $6,000 in closing costs or a lower rate. So for example, today's market rate is 6.65. I just locked somebody in at 6.375, no points, at a 660 credit score. All because of the area in which that property is located had a geographic incentive for that property based on a specific investor. Now, all lenders probably don't have this program because it's like we have to sign up with a particular investor to be able to offer, but it's a regular conventional loan. It's no different from anything else. Like you would not know as a realtor. But these areas so kind of think of your lower income areas is probably a good, a better, like if you don't have, like if you haven't chatted with me or like know about this, like then just kind of think about your lower income areas is a good starting point of like, oh, does this one qualify? Okay. Okay, we already talked about this. Ooh. And we can use border income. Your client has a roommate. That roommate's been living with them for 12 months. That roommate is paying your borrower, your buyer, rent 9 of the last 12 months. I can use that income as long as that roommate is moving into the new house. Caveat, asterisk, that would be under $100,500. So they can't, the borrower, the buyer cannot make more than $100,500 to utilize that border income per the program guidelines. Okay. All right. So this is actually a response from a client that I had. It's like, because we were using border income, CHAFA 4%, 3% down payment. And he's like, literally, I'm only coming, like, I get $2,000 back because my earnest money was $3,000 at closing. He's like, is that even legal? It's like, yes, it was. And he had 20% to put down. He didn't want to put 20% down because he was utilizing it for different investment opportunities. And so just like, this isn't a program for people that really need it. It's also a program that for people that he's like, I'm making 9.5% in my stocks. I don't want to pull 15% down. I want to use 5% down. You're like, so it was a strategic move from a full financial profile. And that's why I do, these for every client with different options. Because even if they say that they want to put 20% down, I'm super happy with that if that's what you want to do. But can we look at also what you're like, if you're savvy and you want to look at like what your returns in the stock market are and talk about like the advantages, 20% down is the worst interest rate. Did you know that? So at 20% down with a 780 credit score, you're getting hit with a 0.375% loan level price adjustment hit. At 15% down, it's only 0.25. Why? Anybody know? Boom. Lenders are covered at 15% down, 19% down. So there's sometimes I've done a 19.5% loan instead of a 20% loan because the math made sense. It was better to put 6 months of mortgage insurance on there, they had excellent credit, so their mortgage insurance was like $35 a month. But for the life of the loan, their rate was cheaper. Yeah, that was mind-blowing when I was a new loan officer. I was like, what, why? They're putting more down. Like, this doesn't make sense. Okay. So why Denver? Denver has one of the highest occupancy rates in the country. So if people are looking to invest in Denver, I would invest in Wheat Ridge, Arvada. Oh my God, I'm blanking. Where did I just say? Not Adams County, Westminster. Yep. So it's still like Denver Metro. The reason we have such a high occupancy rate is because of Denver's primary residence rule. Denver is still a tourist destination. We still have millions of people visiting Colorado, and with DIA as a hub, there's a lot of lot of people traveling here. Same thing with why, if I was a digital nomad and I can work anywhere, why would I pick Denver as my home base? One, I might love it, but two, my rental returns as a primary residence house where my car is parked here, my taxes are filed here, I create a life here when I come home. Also great because of this.
We're very logistical position too.
Yeah.
I have clients that are like, I fly all over the country, but
yeah, Denver's like
between us and Kansas City, it's pretty much spot on in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Flights and stuff like that.
Yeah, or like traveling nurses that like Denver, they can buy it as their primary residence. Now they would have to be stationed here to be able to buy it as a primary residence because a nursing position is very like hands-on, right? You can't like work from anywhere. But I do a program called Remote Year where I travel with different digital nomads for months at a time. And like this is a perfect place for them to like settle down if they're looking to invest, right? But they don't own any other house anywhere else. Instead of getting an investment property, I'm like, let's buy your primary residence. As long as it's your primary place of return per the City of Denver ordinance, you're legal.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Grace can help me to say about Boston. Regarding technology. So my clients asked me, they said, how in Denver, if you put primary residence, there is a lot of one-bedroom condo on Airbnb. How is that possible to rent one bedroom if it's your primary residence?
Yeah. So I have a client. She has a one-bedroom apartment. She rents it on Airbnb. How? She has a storage unit. She puts all of her personal stuff in the storage unit, packs up. Like literally, she's making $200 to $250 a night to go somewhere. So it takes her an hour to pack up her personal stuff, or she's got an owner's closet that she locks off, or the closet access isn't available, or people are breaking the law, right? Like it's very hard to break the ordinance in Denver because they will come and find you. They are not.
A special department who would investigate.
Exactly. Yep. Now, the other side of that is if they're all in one area, like the Glass House, they were talking in the HOA to change the regulations, but the Glass House downtown in like Confluence Park, they allowed short-term rentals. Another unit across the street, whatever that 20th Street on the other side is also another condo association that allows short-term rentals. So it's definitely very possible. They might be gone. Like I was left my house for 6 months. I turned my office if you come to my house tonight, you'll see my office there. I literally, it cost me $3,000 to $1,000, but I made $30,000 that summer. It was well worth converting my primary into more of a rental. And if you come tonight, like I live there, I slept there this morning. Like when you walk in, it kind of looks like an open house.
You don't have to spend night in your primary residence.
It has to be your primary place of return. You do not have to be there when a guest is there. So just a few key takeaways. 1, short-term rentals aren't just for investors. 2, utilize data. I didn't really go into that very much. So AirDNA is a tool that I subscribe to, and I provide this to you and your clients. Like, that's just something that if you need it, let me know. That aggregates Airbnb data based on the listing. This is a bad example because this is in Silverthorne, but it does like revenue projections for each month, annual revenue, daily average rate. It'll tell you which comps it's pulling from, so you can kind of get an idea. It's literally the same as listing a property, except it's listing a property on Airbnb. Then the other tool that I have is something called Rentometer. I always like to know if I'm buying an investment property that can I rent this to a long-term tenant, and at least I might not make my margins, but can at least cover my mortgage. So I pull that for every property. Then I also pull this for primary residence people that are investment minded, because maybe their strategy is 2 years down the road that they're going to move up. You know, what, like if we were renting it today and buying it as a rental, even though they're planning to live there, does it still work for them? And then make sure you know and understand rules and regulations. That's also my strong point. If you like, I can probably rattle them off like with a phone call. And if I can't, I know exactly which folder I've saved it in or which website to go to or whatever to find the rules and regulations of each of those area. Usually I'll also send you like a link to the ordinance because things change, right? Like I want you to have the raw data as well as what I've, you know, if I looked it up 6 months ago, and I hadn't had a client there since. Like, I don't want to be like, yeah, you're good. But we need to look at the like today's data.
What resources are there to research that?
City websites.
Okay, and is there a tab on the city website that says short-term rentals, or do you have to like?
Every website's different.
Okay.
It's a pain in the ass. I mean, I'm sure like same thing with you guys dealing with zoning, right? It's Arvada is different than Denver. Denver's different than Wheat Ridge different. Like, I think the best place to start is Googling short-term rental regulations Denver, then seeing what website pops up. And I would not use any other resource except from the city, because any other resource could be outdated. So you're like, oh, but it said we were good to go. And it's like, well, some lender put that up there 6 months ago and Adams County changed their rules.